Hello and welcome back to another episode. Now, I'm sure immediately you can tell that something is a bit different because you're staring at an out of focus TV screen. And this is deliberately the case, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. But today I want to try something a bit different. I want to record a commentary so I can share some of my thoughts on my favourite film of all time. Well, certainly today at least. It does change from day to day, but nonetheless, this is in my top three, Highlander from 1986. And I've wanted to record a commentary for this film because I just love it so much. I watch it very, very frequently. I try and watch it on my birthday every year. And today, I would like to watch it with you. Now, the screen is deliberately out of focus because I want you to see when the film starts so that we can be in sync. I will count down, I'll press play movie, but depending on the DVD or the Blu-ray copy, there may be some differences, in particular when you go from the menu to the film. There may be a little short animation, for example, on the DVD that isn't on the Blu-ray. So I want you to see that we're in sync, and then probably after a couple of minutes, I'll switch to still images, just so the copyright goblins don't come down on me too hard. Anyway, guys, hopefully this is going to be fun. And at the moment, I have only plans for this commentary. I haven't planned any plans for any others, but who knows? We'll see. Anyway, are you ready? Do you have some popcorn ready? Do you have a nice cup of coffee or something a bit stronger? Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and play movie. So there we go, the little animation that I talked about, and the movie begins. Thorn EMI. Now, right from the beginning, this opening just grabs me at least. Sean Connery's voice just telling us about the mysterious lives of these immortals who've been living down through the centuries. And what's interesting is that not only is it superbly epic, but also there's a slight echo on the voice because apparently it was recorded from Sean Connery's bathroom, or at least the bathroom of his villa, I think, in Spain. He literally phoned in the performance. Um, Followed up, of course, by the amazing soundtrack from Queen, and this is something that when I first watched the film, I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting Queen, and this is what we get. In fact, Queen seemingly loved the concept of the film so much that they insisted on pretty much being the soundtrack. They wanted to write all the music, and it's just perfect. It works so well, and in some respects, I can't really imagine anything better. You know, it's so bombastic. It's so over the top. You know, we're here to meet the rulers of your world. It's got that sort of sci-fi kind of. Well, actually, it's similar to the Flash Gordon soundtrack that they did, or certainly the song that they did for that movie. Um, it's just epic. Gets you right in the mood. But unless there is a mystery at the heart of this film, and that is, who are these immortals? And the last thing you expect is the whole film to start out with a wrestling match, and yet here we are with the is it the Fabulous Freebirds? I think a legendary wrestling uh, tag team, and this is not Madison Square Garden. This is actually a sports arena in New Jersey that they dressed up to look a bit bigger than it is. And originally, this was meant to be a ice hockey match. Basically, the script called for something that was violent and something which would invoke certain emotions in Russell Nash. Here we have a superb shot done on, I think it's called the Skycam. It was one of the first uses, certainly in the US, of this technology, a camera on a wire. It just gives you this sort of shuddering sense of scale. But the focus is not on the wrestlers. The focus is on this mystery man, Russell Nash. Now, I love the stillness of Christopher Lambert here. You are drawn to him. The camera doesn't have to do too much work to tell you who the focus is on. And he is remembering something else entirely. He's not really present. The sound, the baying of the crowd is giving him a flashback. Stomp on the son of a bitch. And the first time I watched this film, again, I had no idea what's going on, but I was intrigued. Unfortunately, I know people who just sort of give up on this movie. They sort of say, "Oh, it's too complicated. I just don't understand what's going on." But I think clearly they're not actually watching the film. Um, the way this film is put together is one of its strengths, and yes, I mean, this is one of my favorite movies, partly because of the subject matter, but also because of the craft. This film has been put together so elegantly. And actually, if you're paying attention, the visual vocabulary, the editing, for example, the stillness of certain characters, as we've just seen, will tell you what you need to know. And right now, we need to know that Russell Nash is meeting someone in Madison Square Garden car park. Now, this apparently is actually a fruit market in London. They emptied it out of all the stalls, sorry, and dressed it as a car park. And fun fact as well, apparently, the UK set dressers didn't really know what American graffiti might look like, so they called it a specialist from the US to put graffiti here and there. The things people do for movies, the details that they go into. But yeah, this I love that he stomps on the Coke can, so it's not going to be rolling around and distracting him in the battle that is to come. But of course, the first time I watched this, I didn't know there was a battle that was about to happen. I was like, what's going on? Who's this? Is it some sort of... Is it a meeting? Is it a spy thing? Is it drugs? What's going on? Assault? What the hell? So all of this was just... I mean, then he draws a katana out of his coat, and suddenly we're in a different movie. We're just in a different world. And of course, frankly, at this point as well, I'm trying to figure out how the title Highlander matches up to the movie. I'm trying to figure out what on earth is going. Again, what's going on? And I think if you're watching the film, you cannot help but be fascinated by it. I love the sound effects of the swords clashing, and incidentally, apparently the blades spark because they are attached to they're electrified. I think they're attached to car batteries or something, which I do believe is a technique that they've reused recently in Star Wars: The Force Awakens. I think they electrified the blades there to give sparks and flashes and basically so the actors look as though they're reacting to something that's really happening in front of them. Now, as someone who has over the years done a little bit of sword fighting for, basically theatrical reasons, historical museum stuff. Some of the sword fighting here isn't amazing, but that's fine. I don't mind. I love the shots that are in this fight. I love the framing of it. It feels like a comic book, and that's actually something which I mentioned in the video I did when I talked about how much I love Highlander. Was the way that it does feel like a comic book movie in so many ways. Now here it all gets a bit weird. This is the only point in the film where I'm a bit confused in terms of editing, is who's backflipping? Because you see them both running after that backflip, and then suddenly he's backflipping again all the way along for some reason. Now, that said though, it does add a certain creepiness to the thing, to proceedings. And actually, I think in some respects, it highlights that it will come to make sense that these people are immortal. So the older guy there isn't an older guy, as it were. He is an immortal. He just looks like an older guy, so he can still do his backflips and get away with it. Oh, the tense grabbing of the sword there. Okay, we're back. So at this point, again, when I first saw the film, I'm fascinated, I'm enjoying it, and then we come to this. A beheading? What the hell? And then this happens. Now, I really love the detail there that the energy fills up the space where his head was, like as he floats off the ground. But this is the mixture, the combination of things that I love so much about this film. Is the fact that you have a modern sort of, I suppose, intrigue, spy type thriller. You have very much, sort of, I suppose, a magical aspect to it, and obviously we ignore Highlander 2, where they explain the reason behind the quickening and all that malarkey. Highlander 2 is not. Well, I own it, but it's not, as far as I'm concerned, part of this story. So we have this element as well. This sort of this magical sci-fi element, and then we have what is essentially a time travel movie as well. But the problem is, I'll say the clever thing is that it's not time travel, is it? It's just that he is traveling through time. And frankly, as an archaeologist in my day-to-day work, um, I think that's one of the reasons why this film really appeals to me, is that I would love to be this guy. I also love that he's lived long enough that he has a sense of where the police won't look for his sword. He just puts it there. Now here we come to the first of one of my favourite aspects of this film, and that is the editing. Look at the way we rise up and we're in the past, and all the way through we have these just magnificent cuts that aren't for the most part aren't too gimmicky, but they are nonetheless sort of somehow grounded in. So there we had a sort of very physical sense of rising up above the ground and arriving in Scotland. And I'll talk about these ones as we continue through the film. But it's stuff like that. This is, as I was saying, a film that's well crafted, and I very much appreciate it. It's not a film with an amazing budget. Um, it's not even a particularly historically accurate film. Like some of the stuff that these guys are wearing is frankly ridiculous, but it is a really lovingly and beautifully put together movie. I do love the banter between the boys here. I also really appreciate the fact that the filmmakers had the patience to trust Christophe Lambert, I guess, Christopher Lambert. Um, Initially, apparently, when he started filming, he couldn't really speak a word of English. My understanding is that changed over the course of the film, and certainly after the film was finished. Also, I'm not quite sure why they're burning that cross. I mean, it looks kind of dramatic, but what's going on there? Anyway. Know what piece that is. Um, yeah, I love the fact that they had the patience with him to feed him the lines, and it kind of works for the character. I mean, as we will come to hear in a moment, he his accent is noted in the movie as being a bit weird, and that fits, I think, with an immortal who's born in Scotland and ends up living in New York over the course of a few hundred years. Now, fun fact here: this is obviously this is a real place. I love how grim this is. I do like the Highlands of Scotland. I prefer the Highlands of Wales more. They're a bit less grim and lifeless, if I'm honest. But but here we have the awesome Kurgan. The boy is mine. Played by the amazing Clancy Brown, who I also really love his role in Shawshank Redemption. But who doesn't love that movie? Yeah. Anyway, these guys apparently they're a combination of students and military, either cadets or veterans who turned up, fancied a bit of a scrap, and apparently they were being paid in whiskey. I mean, being from Wales, I hate it when people pull out some of these Celtic stereotypes, but yeah, I mean, these guys, they kind of lived up to it. Yeah, we'll do what you want, just give us some whiskey. Again, the choreography isn't brilliant, but I do love the fact that you get this really rough and raw sense of what a battle is, like drowning people. It's ugly, isn't it? And the fact that here you have a priest slicing someone's throat, it shows the hypocrisy of humanity. And I think that's something that actually comes through in the film quite well, is the fact that Connor, above all, comes to, I suppose, understand, respect, and sort of criticize humanity as he lives. As he lives his life, he soaks himself in humanity. Whereas the Kurgan is kind of the opposite. The Kurgan, I mean, look at that. He must have hated it when people started dressing differently. What, I can't wear my skull helmet anymore. Oh, I don't want to wear a suit. Oh, fine. Whatever. Don't want to wear normal clothes. Now here again, it's just like a comic book. The way that shot was framed, the way you have the flashing light on him, it's hyper real, and I do appreciate it. And that's gotta hurt, immortal or not. Now, a word of warning. Oh, here you go. Sorry. Yeah, another wonderful transition through time back to the present. And of course, we've got to remember that for this guy, this is his life. This isn't the past and the present and the future. From the Highlander's perspective, this is just his life. It's like me remembering when I was living in York or when I grew up in Preslatin and whatever. And I love it. And it's one of those things. And I also really appreciate the fact that, I mean, because often when immortals are portrayed in fiction, they end up being sort of world weary, life weary. I do love this guy's performance. Pal. Don't even breathe. Don't even move. I also love that he's got... Don't even breathe. I love that the Nash has a raw talent when it comes to fighting people. So again, another funky little transition back to the past there. But I love that how through time, clearly he's fought in enough battles, he's been in enough moments of confrontation that he just knows how to shove. He knows how to shove a man. And I also appreciate that they didn't go down the route of him having soaked up some sort of, he's not become like a superhuman being. He hasn't become a ultimate martial artist. He's not, an incredible warrior in that sense. He is a man. And he's a man who just happens to be a few hundred years old. I always wondered when the priest there says, I must attend them, whether he's saying, I must go and slit their throats. Obviously not, though. He's a clan priest. These guys these are his people. So he'll be looking after them. This as well, this is one of my favourite transitions here. Suddenly we get the flashes like he's in a crime scene. It's such a tight film, this one. I really do appreciate it. And I'm going to keep on repeating that, I know, but I make no apology for it. I think people, I don't know, people tend to sort of look at this movie, and in some respects, I can see why they look at it, on a surface level. It is slightly, I don't know, just teenage men chopping off other men's heads in car parks, this kind of thing. I really love the texture of the film. I love the fact that in some respects it feels a bit like a George Romero movie, like the extras, for example, just there. Where's my car, man? I'm gonna get my car back. This sort of thing. It's not all high quality. So in that sense, it feels a bit George Romero. I love how at times it does feel a little bit like a just an action film. But that's the clever thing, is that they've managed to sneak into this texture, into the slightly dodgy audio and the way that it's all been put together. Some really good ideas and some really clever, a really clever, to use a fancy word, deconstruction of what it means to be an immortal. So yeah, I don't know. Again, I hate to say it, but I think this is a think. This is strange enough. I think this is a thinking man's movie. But it's up to you whether or not you think. I think. Here we got a classic '80s depiction of a police station. I also love that as well. It's not, again, it's not the idea that he's somehow got special powers, but he's just lived long enough that he can stare a man down. It's like, who the fuck are you? Like, what are you? 35? Hmm. Lots of different places. I love that, and as I was saying before, I love that his accent and the fact that he wasn't the best at English at the time plays to the advantage of the character. So even just then, when he's saying a sword, he's being fed the lines, but it plays into his sarcasm. It plays into the fact that he is from lots of different places. He's gonna have a weird accent. I love it. To the car park. If it is kind of funny. You cruising for a piece of ass. It's really weird, but I love how this guy pronounces the word blowjob, how he actually says it. Kind of find his teeth sort of hypnotic in that moment. But again, here we go with Nash. Just sort of, he's able to handle himself. It's not flashy. It's not overt. He hasn't gone to extreme lengths to be some sort of master of a martial art, but he's had 400, 500 years of experience. Speaking of experience, here we have the modern appearance of the Kurgan. I know his name. We just put Queen on. Destiny! And so, if you look at like the way that the Kurgan is lit here, for example, this is what I mean by the stylistic element of the film. Is that it is the style at times runs the risk of slapping you in the face. Sometimes it'll sort of say, look how cool this shot is, or look, it is that overt, conscious framing and stylized lighting, stylized moments, emphasizing drama or whatever. it almost pushes it too far. And this is something that I appreciate, is that they seem to have had a sense of when not to go further with the style elements. Um, but it does come out with a visual vocabulary, as I say, a visual sort of look that just works for the film. And I always remember seeing this. The first time I saw this scene, first time I saw this movie was on TV. It was late night showing of the film. But this scared the shit out of me, if I'm honest. It's reminiscent, isn't it, of Arnie in Terminator in the hotel room. He's fixing his eye or whatever in the bath, in the shoddy little room. The surroundings don't matter. These are men on missions, Arnie and Clancy. And who cares if it? I mean, I've seen people talk about how it's not practical to have a sword that comes apart like that. I don't care. I don't care. Look how cool it is. And he's like a pro athlete, just ready to get stuff done. I'm Candy. Of course you are. Now, as a kid, I didn't understand what happened next. As an adult, I'm like, whew, that's going to be an intense evening for Candy, I think. Real close shave. Oh, smooth shave. Rat. But look, you see, look at the way they've got the lights here coming through the windows, going across the lab. There's all these weird angles actually in this scene, for example. So even a fairly boring room, they shoot in a way to make it kind of, again, borderline style over substance. But I think it works. I think if you were to make a graphic novel of this story, an awful lot of the framing that you see in the film is what the comic book artists would choose, I think. But you see, he knew that the cops wouldn't look there for his sword. Just because he's got experience. Now this always bothered me, even as a kid. I was like, won't that concrete have rebar in it? It'll have steel running through it. No way you're going to be able to go, oh yeah, here you go. This is where the battle is. But anyway, I love this film, so I give it a pass. So again, it's weird. Some things just go over your head when you're younger. And as a grown-up, it's the fact that she comes in here all the time, and just drinks large quantities of spirits. The usual. Some obvious product placement there with the Glenmorangie. I hate to say it, but there's no way on earth that a true ancient Scotsman would want Glenmorangie. Simple as that. Glenmorangie is your it's the equivalent of Bud, isn't it? Bud Light, Budweiser or whatever. It's not it's not actually the best stuff. My favourite whiskey, incidentally, is Jura, spelled Jura. There are various versions of Jura. Also, I love the look. He doesn't like, I want to walk you home, Brenda. I sort of find myself thinking, surely to goodness, if you've had all this life experience, you must know how to approach ladies better than that. It's not just like And in that sense, again, this is where on some one level, in some respect, this film is very much, it's a teenage boys film. It's a sometimes it's a slightly clumsy film, slightly sort of man movie. Now here, well, I think he has a sense that he's being followed. I think it's not that he thinks he's about to bump into someone, even though he is. Or maybe he does. Maybe he sensed the presence of the Kurgan. I've always loved musical cues like that. You see again with the lighting, the uplighting of Clancy Brown there, the backlighting of this whole sequence here. You can even see the spotlights on the right hand side there, and the gelled. It feels like a set. It feels like almost like a theatre set actually. All the smoke, but I love it. Hyper real, hyper real. Now this is something where I imagine actually over time it probably would have been a good idea, maybe, Connor, to get a little bit of that extraordinarily martial arts skills. Another time, Highlander. Hey. I wonder if police would actually say that. That's ironic. Go home. Don't follow me again. I can stalk you, but don't you dare stalk me. Here we are back in the past. Now again, as a kid, I never understood this. I didn't understand why they weren't just happy that he was alive, and frankly, as an adult, I can sort of understand. And now, I can sort of see why I was so confused. But people have a way of being terrified when things don't go the way that they expect, the way that they predict. Mm. And the fact that she was so enamored with him, and now she's basically a ringleader of hatred. The line between love and hate. It's a fine one. Gotta say that priest's hairdo is pretty funky. Now the other thing as well to remember is that this village will be a village in mourning. They've probably just lost, well, we know they have. They've lost more than one man, definitely. Men are dying this day, as the guy said before. So this whole village is in shock, mourning, horror, and it's convenient to be beating up this scapegoat. I do like this bit. No! Burn him! She's almost crazy with the need to destroy him. I love this, yeah. I'll bloody well walk out of here. It's okay. Go on, off you go before they skin you. Sort of wonder how he gets out of the yoke. You see? Just like a comic book. And here we go, another brilliant transition. Look at that. Gorgeous. Just gorgeous. And it's such a shame because this the director of this this movie, let me just confirm on my IMDb-ness, Russell Mulcahy, Russell. He went on to do, let's see, yeah, not particularly great stuff. So so we have Highlander, we have Highlander 2, The Quickening. We have lots of music videos, which may be where he gets his sort of slick visual style from, you know, musical and visual metaphors. And also in that sense, musical cues. I mean, just then when he opens the doors to his inner sanctum. And we'll come back to the director in a moment, but here we have just a superb, beautiful, elegant little room filled with the ephemera of many lifetimes. I also love the fact that he's been driven to remember this stuff by being confronted by the Kurgan. So he's just been confronted by the Kurgan, and now he's remembering, oh, that man, you know, the first time I met him was back in Scotland. But yeah, so the director hasn't worked on anything nearly as good as this since this. He did Tales of the Crypt TV series, that's pretty cool, I guess. Queen's Greatest Flicks 3. A couple of TV show episodes he's done. Human League. AC/DC. The Curse of King Tut's Tomb TV movie. Oh, blimey. And Resident Evil Extinction. Good God. Good Lord. How far this guy fell over time in terms of... Because I just wouldn't have known it. I mean, given the way this film is put together. I mean, even that, the entrance of Sean Connery there. Such a tight film. And I'm definitely not Scottish. Oh, Heather. I know I was talking over it, but yes, that scene with Heather, I definitely noticed that when I was a younger man. So here, if you pay attention to this, this sequence here, these two immortals are meeting. They're next to each other. And now they're not. It's just fantastic, isn't it? And we hear Electrical Storm in New York. It's just, I love it. I love this film. I love the way it's put together. So as I say, I can't quite explain the director's career. I can't quite explain what went wrong. Maybe the cinematographer had more input on this than the director did. Maybe the editor was one of the the key talents in putting this story together. But the way it goes back and forth, it could have been just a mess. This film, it could have been a difficult to understand, clunky, clumsy mess of a film. But actually, I think it's these oversized police photographs. They're from a modelling agency or something. I have to say, I've always loved Nash's flat. You know, it's again, he could have had a much bigger, better place. Being an immortal, he's probably got lots of savings somewhere, but he has a sense of taste and a way of living that I quite appreciate. It's fairly simple. And here we go with another transition. Look at this. I love it. Balance. Here we come to one of my favourite sequences in the whole film. Haggis. What's haggis? Says the Frenchman. You eat it, of course. Devoting. Oh dear, yeah, the idea of a Frenchman. You are a liar. Of your potential. Now get out. I love it. But yeah, the idea of a Frenchman telling a Scotsman that haggis is food. It's fantastic. Incidentally, though, if you've never tried haggis, you really should. It is not a horrible food. People often sort of react very viscerally to haggis, but it's wonderful. It's a very rich food. It's a bit like black pudding, but with more barley in it. It's often also very well spiced too. I love that he's exploring with his sword. I'm gonna kill him. Gonna kill that man who's threw me into the loch. Again, it's almost actually not so much comic booky as a little bit Japanese as well in its editing. Like an old samurai movie or something. I hate you. I'd love to know more about Ramirez's background, being an Egyptian. Presumably an ancient Egyptian, I guess. Men will fear you.
Learn to conceal your special and harness the power until the time of the gathering.
No, I make no apologies. I am nibbling.
When only a few of us are left, we will feel an
irresistible pull.
towards a faraway land.
America.
To fight for the prize.
Now here, I suppose, are they implying that people can, that immortals can, maybe they have greater stamina than mortals?
Never lose your temper. If your head comes away from your neck, it's over.
Oh. Training montage. How did we get up here? It doesn't matter. All matters is that we're doing
Never overextend your thrust.
a montage.
And off balance.
Heather, please.
Heather, please.
Yeah. How did we get up here? Helicopter. Don't think about it. Again, beautifully backlit.
If it came down to just us two.
Not remotely subtle. But that's part of the style.
We must fight until only one remains. You are safe only on holy ground. None of us will violate that law. It's tradition. Now for the last. Trust me.
This is an element of the film which I really wish that they had developed a little bit more. This idea of having a connection with nature, and I mean, it is mentioned at the end of the movie as part of the prize, you know, connecting to others. But what does it mean, I wonder? Does this mean that they have a greater affinity with the planets? Perhaps. I don't know. It would have been interesting to sort of draw on that. So maybe a little bit like in, you know, in The Crow, where well, our hero is able to see through the eyes of a bird. You know, maybe we could have had some of that happen here, where they can use the natural world to their advantage. But it's such a dense film already. I can't imagine that they would have had time in the script to really expand on that too much. And I've always thought, oh no, what happens? What happens next? How'd you get that back? We can only hope that it's not too damaged. Yeah, good.
Very good.
Although they are blocking edge to edge, which was something which isn't good for your sword. Now, apparently, Connery and Lambert became such good friends while shooting this. They referred to each other by their character names, and apparently they still do. I find that really kind of cool, actually, kind of cute. That well, yeah, that they're having as much fun as I hope they would filming a film like this.
But what I want is a family. You cannot have a family.
this we cannot have children. We're men. I love it. Obviously, this is not what the tone of this moment is meant to be. But after years of watching it, I cannot help but think that, yeah, someone walking past would go, "What? What are they talking about? We cannot have children. I have no womb." Oh, Heather. She is beautiful.
You must leave her, brother.
So here we're about to hear about Shikeko and how Ramirez has had his heart broken in the past, and this sword was made by Shikeko's father. And I've always loved how this film hints at the potential for traveling the world. You have all the time in the world, literally, as an immortal. So why not? Why not just walk everywhere? Why not explore every inch of the planet? And that's the thing that I've always really, truly fantasized about. Is that, if I was one of these guys, the opportunity to see everything, to meet people, to learn languages, to soak up wisdom, and to sort of to learn more about everything. It'd just be just so cool.
That wasn't the first time you felt that sensation, was it? No. When the clouds fought the faces and a black night hung over, I felt it then. Only it was definite, not painful. That black night was a Kurgan. It's because of him that I saw too. Who is the Kurgan? And where does it come from?
The steppes of Russia. Now, interestingly, as an archaeologist, I can tell you that the Kurgans, or Kurgan rather, is a name for a burial mound. In fact, a type of burial mound.
How do you fight such a savage? Faith, steel. In the end, you can be what you want.
Gotta say, I'd be keeping the charming Ramirez away from Heather if I was Connor. Excuse me. There we go. She was most helpful. Yes, please. Why not? Oh man, so this whole sequence as well. I have to say, I still do to this day think it's such a shame that they destroy the tower in their epic battle. Now, of course, it makes perfect sense that they do. That's just how epic the battle is. But I find myself just going, "Oh no! Don't destroy the table! Oh, you're wrecking the place."
The Highlander! Where is he? You're too late. I've prepared it for you. You waste your time.
Now, supposedly, at this point in the film, one of the actors was very nearly badly injured. I think Sean Connery, at the point that the Kurgan jumped into the room, was almost smacked. I think cut on the face or in the chin, and the shock of it sent Connery off the set. He was just like, "No, no, I'm not having anything to do with this." Thankfully, they talked him back onto the set again. But again, again, that's something I like about the movie, is that it feels like it is that kind of production where sometimes, for example, during the battle at the beginning when you have all those Scottish students fighting for whiskey. Yeah. I like that it has that sort of slightly rough around the edges kind of feel. And at this point, I'm just like, get down there, cut off his head. Come on. Don't just watch him. I have the high ground, Anakin. It's over. You underestimate my power. Sorry, wrong film. Clearly the wrong film, definitely. I love that in moments here you can actually see people pushing the set in. So when the wall's collapsing, you just about see someone's arm sort of shoving the bricks and this kind of thing. It's fantastic. And the funny thing is that, you know, even knowing all this stuff, usually when I watch the film, I'm not thinking about it. I'm not, you know, often when I watch, for example, the extras on movies, sometimes I sort of come away thinking, oh well, I wish I didn't know that. But actually, in this case, knowing more about how this film was put together, knowing some of the banter and the stories, just adds to my love of it. And so I can watch it just in terms of the drama. I can be sort of, you know, open-mouthed at this moment, you know, yeah, you know, this kind of thing. But also as well, again, I really appreciate the craft, the fact that in some respects, it feels like a film that you know, with enough time and effort, you could put together yourself. The fact that it has these slightly cheesy special effects. Again, the craft, I love it.
Who is the woman? She's mine.
Now at this point, I've always wondered why he doesn't sort of shove backwards or shove forwards or something. We've seen Clancy Brown or the Kurgan survivor fall. Chop. Also, incidentally, Clancy Brown really sells the quickening very well, doesn't he? With his eyes rolling back in his skull. It's just freaky. No, Heather, you should just run away. Don't investigate the immortal man. No. Now, I also love that it completely makes sense that Nash is an antiques dealer. And in some respects, his love of his life, his love of history, his appreciation for other people's love of this stuff has led him to be an antiques dealer. Also, presumably, lots of these antiques are things that he's amassed over the years. He's probably got a warehouse of cool, special things, which again, as an archaeologist, I'm a bit jealous of. Gonna do his trademark. Coming on to the ladies.
You sure it was Brenda? She was in Nash's shop with talking about. What are you looking at, Bridget?
The eyes in the back of your head.
Now, the Rachel backstory, I do believe, was cut from the American theatrical release of the movie. So this sequence here with the Nazis, for whatever reason, was cut. But I like it. Again, I like the fact that it once again, it's an exploration of what it is to be an immortal. And this guy is just going, oh, what the hell's going on? He's communicating so much in this sense of the world's coming apart at the seams. This is not a path necessarily that he was expecting the future to be like when he was a Highlander in Scotland. But then the fact that you're going to meet people like Rachel.
Don't be afraid. What's your name?
Rachel. Everybody's there.
Mm.
Shh. I'm like you, I'm alone. Come with me, Rachel.
Waifs and strays. Who you, if you are Nash, you're going to feel compelled to look after.
It's a kind of magic.
Which leads to the song in the second movie, the Queen's song, It's Kind of Magic.
Move. Nein. Erst musst du mich erschießen.
Whatever you say, Meg.
Whatever you say, Jack. You're the maths race. Let's go.
I think he says something like, no, you'll have to shoot me or something like that, doesn't he?
Would you listen to me for one moment, please? You can't hide your feelings from me. I've known you too long. How about loneliness?
Mm.
I'm not lonely. I've got everything I need, Rach.
Oh, no, you don't. You refuse to let anyone love you.
Love is for boys.
Yeah.
You're such a light, Rachel. You always were.
I sometimes wonder whether or not these two had a relationship, or not. I don't know. Would that be too weird that he and her got together? But then again, you know, if he gets together with anyone, eventually they're going to become an old lady, as we see a little bit later in the movie.
Just a minute.
Again, I love this. I love this whole gag of her setting up the room. But again, because he's had centuries of life experience, he's just able to come in, pick the whole, read the whole situation, pick it apart.
Good evening.
I imagine, you know, he's seen it all, done it all, got the T-shirt.
Shall we step inside? No, thanks. Where are you going?
I forgot my earring. Please have a drink. I'll grab it in the bar. Do you know what you're doing?
Yep. So it really doesn't take him long to go.
I like your place.
You can spot the cops outside. I said.
I said interesting view.
Isn't it great?
You never told me what you do for a living.
I work for the Metropolitan Museum in acquisition.
That explains your interest in ancient weapons.
Especially the samurai.
Very nice.
Shall we have a toast?
Yes.
This as well.
Brandy. Bottle 17.
It's fantastic. The way that smells and pop songs. And trivia just sort of seep into our lives, you know. For him, well, he's just got a slightly longer life, so.
England recognized the independence of the United States.
Is that right?
Yes.
What's that?
It's for you,
Can I open it?
if you like.
Shit.
You bastard. Where did you find this?
I have an extensive library. Odd thing. Your bio doesn't mention the Met. It says you work for the police. In forensics. Are you and Moran trying to set me up?
I don't work for Moran.
Then why is that bald policeman sitting outside watching your apartment? You remember him. Moran didn't kill him.
What are you gonna do?
The question is, what are you going to do? You going to turn off the tape, or you going to shoot me with a free fire?
I am not looking for killer. I am looking for a sword. The one used on Fazio. I found pieces of it under the garden. I only want to see the samurai.
Why?
I told you because it's not supposed to exist. I dated pieces of the blade in 600 BC, but metal had been folded 200 times, and the Japanese didn't start making swords like that till the Middle Ages.
Now, interestingly, when it comes to these sorts of swords, katanas that have been folded, you know, dozens of times, hundreds of times, people often mistakenly believe that the number of folds adds to the strength. It doesn't necessarily. I mean, it does. It certainly adds to the texture of the sword. It gives it a pattern welded kind of appearance because you're mixing metals together. But it doesn't add anything physically to the strength of the sword. Although, if you are an ancient Japanese or a medieval Japanese swordsmith, you will believe that with every fold and every prayer that you do with every fold, the sword is getting stronger. So that's kind of where the myth comes from, the fact that they thought it would make the sword stronger, and so people have sort of absorbed the idea that it makes the sword stronger, but it doesn't necessarily. One of my favourite songs on the soundtrack. This often turns up in my my out and about playlist on my phone. I listen to it in the car when I'm driving around. Who wants to love forever? So yeah, I suppose this is an element of especially in vampire novels, you know, an element of an immortal's life that's often shown is the fact that people drift in and out of their lives, and there's a regret often that amasses in the heart and mind of the immortal. And yeah, I do like the fact that they showed this. This was actually one of the first times I had seen this explored as a concept, certainly in film. This idea that, of course, he's not getting any older, and, well, she is. But, as I was saying earlier, I really appreciate the fact that Connor has managed to find a way forward. He hasn't just stagnated, I guess, in the same way that you see. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the books or the films, but like in Twilight, you have oh God, what's his name? Robert Pattinson's vampire character. Can't remember the character's name. That's probably for the better. But anyway, you have this vampire who is somewhat as a stagnant entity. And also, actually, frankly, the Kurgan in this film is a somewhat stagnant entity. His mode of living, his worldview, there's no real hint at what he wants or why he wants the prize. He's not a constructive entity. He's not building anything. He's just destructive. He is anarchistic, I guess. Anarchic. And I think I mentioned this in the video I made about this film previously. He's the flip side of the coin in some respects. He is doing precisely what Connor MacLeod and Russell Nash, as it were, doesn't do. He's disrespectful of human life. He has no real plans. He's just drifting along in immortality. Whereas Connor makes his life, collects things, meets new people, seems to enjoy the company of others.
The sun is shining. It's not cold. You've got your sheepskins on. And the boots have been put on. Good night, my buddy.
And here he leaves his sword and MacLeod behind. That's the end of that life. Now at this point, yeah, the cuts back and forth from past to present are less. Yeah, they become much more casual, I guess. And I think that's because they've established what's going on. They've established that his past mingles with the present, just as the past mingles with all our presents, you know. And Castigear here is magnificent. Boom, boom.
So, the gathering is here. Time's almost caught us, my friend. You think we should go on? I think we should have a fight. Oh no. Remember last time?
What the heck are they drinking?
It was 1783. 1783.
I love this as well.
Famous duel on Boston Common.
Yeah, what happens when an immortal gets wasted? Well, he makes bad decisions.
It is ready. Mr. Bassett is waiting, sir. Tell him I'm ready.
Oh. Yeah.
That's it? That you? Mr. Bassett.
I love it.
Stop, sir. I beseech you. I apologize for calling you wife loaded water. Hey. Shoot him, sir.
Shoot him. Ah. I also love his name, Victor Kruger. Yeah, the Kurgan's current alias. perfectly creepy.
Hey, Rockefeller, how'd you like candy? She said you were kind of
Kinky.
Don't ever speak to me. Don't ever speak to me again. Do you understand? Good.
Yeah.
I hope you get your head chopped off.
You asshole.
And you! Shut it!
Yeah, he is. He's just the flip side of the coin to McLeod and Nash. And to be fair, Clancy Brown, who is apparently a lovely man, he's a gentle giant, really does a great job of selling this deranged immortal. An immortal with no thoughts for the future. Also, as well, something else that comes to mind is the fact that they don't feel the need to explain why these guys are drawn to New York in 1986 to do battle. There is just a sense that they'll be irresistibly pulled to a faraway land. I know that some of this stuff has been explored in some of the other films, possibly even in the TV series. There've been hints of some of this, but in some respects, I like that it's a fairly vague backstory. That they didn't feel the need to go into it. You didn't see, Lego movie style, someone make a prophecy at the beginning or something like that. One day you will be drawn to a far-off land, and the chosen one, blah blah blah. It's in some respects, actually, it's building on the great tradition in the US of urban folklore, urban mythology. The idea of the stories that you pass on from kid to kid, this kind of thing. But also, I mean, not to overthink it, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning. If you think about ancient stories, they don't apart from telling you maybe I don't know, like Heracles or is the son of Odin, son of Zeus. You don't get all the reasons and the why-fors and the spelled out. You just told these people are special. These are demigods or whatever, and the story proceeds. Excuse me. That is excuse me. That is basically how the best stories are. It's about the story. It's not actually about the facts behind the story. And as we've seen in other films, if you go too much into the facts, if you want to explain the science, for example, the science of Highlander, then it can all go a bit pear-shaped, as we see in Highlander 2, as we saw, for example, in the Star Wars prequels, with the Matrix, for example. The moment that they stepped away from simply having the mythology, having names and places, and I suppose destiny driven as opposed to scientifically explained, narratives, it all gets a bit dry and boring. Mom. I'd love to know if this is London as well, as opposed to New York. She does a great job. He really does. So this cross-eyed, frantic screaming. Ah! Also, Oh no, that's New York, yeah, of course. But like, why doesn't he take the car? Yeah, the Firebird car of this guy, the guy who's in hospital now. Why doesn't he take that car instead of chopping the roof off? And then, but again, that's the Kurgan. The Kurgan is to quote Heath Ledger's Joker, just does things.
I understand you saw the guy that stuck you, is that right? You're kidding me, man. Is that him?
No.
Come on, quit kidding me, dude. It was dark in that house. Freak was trying to kill me. Never forget his face. Scar across his neck. Depressed? Yeah. You don't want about depressed. It's B57. We had truck with his shotguns. Three big door bat knife.
So actually, this bit where he goes on to talk about the more fantastical elements of the encounter. We sort of step outside the booth and we don't actually hear what he's saying. He's just like describing it. This reminds me very much of The Usual Suspects. I think in that film we sort of see someone describing something. You're like, okay, yeah. Again, it's craft. You know, you don't. In some respects, it's better to see their reaction to his story than to hear the story. But also, frankly, we've already seen the story. We know how crazy what's just happened to him was. You know. What does incompetent mean? Now, if I didn't consider this film to be such a great film, and I was considering where it could be improved, I think a little bit of Brenda's investigation could be cut from the film. So here she is, tying down the reality of who Nash is, and eventually landing on the fact that he adopts the identities of new people every now and then. Because I think this this whole sort of section of the film kind of breaks some of some of the basic rules of narrative in terms of it's often a bad idea to have the audience knowing more than the characters do. And here, okay, sure, we don't know exactly how he's been doing it, and so in some respects we don't know more than the characters do, but we do know what she's chasing. So maybe if this sort of stuff was right at the beginning of the movie, maybe if we had this lady who was chasing a crazy theory about a man, and then we get to know the man, that might work slightly better. But I don't know. In that sense, I suppose I'm trying to be forthright in so much as I don't want no film's perfect. I don't want to pretend that this film is perfect. It's just simply one of my favourite films. I also don't buy that computers in 1986 could do that with handwriting analysis. Now I do like that that we have Heather's death, as it were, paid off here, as he promised on her birthday. He remembers her. Mm. Now, this church has always bothered me as a location. It doesn't feel like it's in New York. And that is because, I'm just Googling it now, it's not in New York. This is actually in London. This is a film called, there's a church, sorry, called St. Augustine's, Augustine Kilburn, London. And this reminds me actually of a similar problem I had watching Marvel's Civil War movie, where during that film we have the funeral of Agent Peggy, the funeral of Captain America's original girlfriend, in a building that's clearly not in London. Like the architecture of that church is completely wrong for anything authentic in the UK, and in that sense, the architecture here is completely wrong for an authentic American church. It feels like an old world building, and it is. But then again, I'm an archaeologist. I can't help but pick up on these things. I really love, though, how completely twisted he is. You see how, like all the other immortals, for example, they won't challenge each other on holy ground, and with that, presumably, would or should come a certain amount of respect for holy ground, whether you're religious or not. Presumably, it's sort of built into the code. The Kurgan's is barely holding on to that, but also he's barely holding on to his humanity. If you look at his neck with all the safety pins, the way that he shaved his head, he's a crude, disturbing, twisted form of humanity, and I love it. I love how this is what Nash could be if Nash didn't hold on to and didn't keep on renewing his humanity, keep on being open to relationships, keep on being open to the people around him, and respecting the accomplishments of society, Love it. I'm a worm. Now this is presumably, I haven't looked into it, but presumably a bald wig on Clancy Brown, and it makes his head look a bit odd shaped. Now I wonder if his head is in fact odd shaped. I shall quickly check it. Check that. Hang on. Clancy Brown,
What are you doing here?
bald Highlander.
He died at birth in Syracuse, New York.
Nothing's coming up. Let's see.
Are the claymores real? What is this, a museum? This stuff must be worth a fortune.
Nope, nothing specific. Either way, it looks crude and magnificent.
I cannot die.
Everything's got their own.
This reminds me of the Lego Batman movie. Hey, want to know my secret identity? Now this, as a kid, again, I had no real problems with it. This just seemed like, oh yeah, of course, this is what you do. You know, you sort of meet someone, stab yourself with them, with their help, and then
Born in 1518 in the village of
make sweet love.
Glencoe.
As an adult, I think to myself, I'm not sure that would work. I'm not convinced that bleeding all over the floor, and frankly, having a wound that doesn't heal, you know, it heals at a normal rate. It hasn't been hinted that. Well, actually, no, I suppose it has. I guess, but back in Scotland, he was up and about, wasn't he, the next day? So maybe it does heal quicker than otherwise. It might do. But anyway, I'm not convinced that having a wound in your chest is the best way to seduce someone. I mean, that's just me. Who knows? maybe you just had to be there. You know, New York in the 80s. They were into some. It's like the swinging 60s in London. Who knows? But I'm not convinced. He's like, oh, I've been stabbed. Careful. And again, something that I think holds the film together is not just like an obligatory, you know, romantic interest or, you know, 80s boob scene, as it were. I think something that does work is the fact that he is suddenly reminded of the fact that he's going to potentially be dead. You know, he could die tomorrow, so he's reaching out to someone who has uncovered his secrets. So I think it works, just about holds together. It's slightly cliche though.
Remember, that isn't gonna work. I can't get involved in that again.
I'll sleep with you, but can't get involved with you. Quite like his presence in the background there.
That's not your problem. You're afraid to live. Speak for yourself. You'll lose your head.
Ha 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 ha. I quite like the little hint there that yeah, he's able to sort of look at the lion and stare it down in the same way that he stared down the policeman in the interview room. And maybe that's what this connection to nature is. I also love that Clancy Brown's. Is it one of those milk ice lollies he's eating there? One of my favourites as a kid. Yeah. But maybe that's the payoff, or a payoff for this idea of feeling the stag and running on the beach. I don't know. But here, magnificent. The stomping music of Queen. Boom, chee, boom, chee, boom, chee. boom. The green and red lighting. Again, that sort of that on that cusp of being overly staged, but it just works as a texture. Look at that, playing chicken, driving without his hands on the wheel, covering up his eyes. He's delusional. He is psychotic. He is the result of thousands of years of boredom, I guess. And perhaps actually, the Kurgan is in fact a surprise. You know, a very clever person. I don't think he's an idiot. I don't think he's just a fool. But I think he's someone who he doesn't connect with people anymore. He doesn't feel challenged by the world, challenged by anyone. There are also, I mean, I was talking about how the film stylistically reminds me of things like, you know, things like The Crow or things like a George Romero movie, but also John Carpenter's films as well. It has that sort of feeling, especially in some of this editing here, like just before when you know, the guys were turning around, lit, and then sharp cut away, implying that they've been hit by a car. Reminds me of like, is it The Fog and all this kind of thing from Carpenter. I just find it mesmerizing. Also, interestingly, this track isn't on the soundtrack. On the soundtrack, on the on, you know, it's hard to get hold of this particular music. I love how they appropriate the da 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 da, the classic theme. Yes, I did look into it, and it's hard to get hold of all the music in the film. Don't do it. Well, no, do it. Obviously, we want to see him rescue.
Rachel, there was an instruction.
He's walking away from everything.
I want you to follow her. There's a power of eternity. You'll have everything you need.
You're not coming back. Even if you can, you're not coming back.
And I think there's something else here that's quite interesting, in so much as an immortal, he's come to a point, you know, they've explored the idea that actually, in some respects, the Kurgan expresses this much more clearly, actually, that you get to a point where things mean nothing to you. You can actually walk away from everything. There is a sort of central simplicity to existence. And so the things that he has surrounded himself with, the life that he's surrounded by, is not permanent in the same way that it is for everyone else. This doesn't mean, you know, my things will be mine until I die. His things will be his for a time, and then they will pass on, whether he lives or not. But he'll certainly outlive almost everything in his life, and so I like that. I like that he's, again, as a kid, I never really understood. But why is he walking away from everything? I don't understand. How can he do that? But as a grown up, I can appreciate how actually he must have a light touch, a light grasp on the things around him, which I think is probably quite healthy, actually, and something which I try to do with my things. As much as, I mean, recently I've been talking about collecting and collections on this YouTube channel, and I try not to define myself by those things. I try not to hold on to them. You know, if the house burned down, yeah, there were a couple of things that I would want to try and rescue, a couple of things that I would really regret having been lost. But those things are not me. And I am better for having at least seen and held those things. I think as I was talking about with some of my GameCube games, like Super Mario Sunshine, for example, I had to re-buy that because at one point I had to sell it. I had to pay some rent basically, and I always had a sensation, a feeling that having played the game, I was better off. If that's what I mean. I didn't need to have the game necessarily at that point in my life, but I had experienced it, and I could always come back to it. So yeah, so basically, I appreciate it. I appreciate the philosophy, I guess, behind being able to walk away from everything. Anyway, we're well into the denouement. I like it. Again, it's walking that line between being a stage and an overly staged thing, as it were. I love it. The sparks, Now, actually, if you look too closely, the two actors there, and the weapons that they're using, and the bald wig on the stunt double there doesn't quite hold up to to intense scrutiny. This is a love that I've always loved this sort of spinning, and I love the fact that actually like his sword is sparking, like that water is electrified, and these guys can only be in it because they're immortal. Look at that. Brilliant. Now the music, at certain times here, when it's not songs, so when it's like this sort of scored music, might sound familiar to you. It certainly does sound familiar to me, not least because obviously I've seen it in this film. But actually the composer did the music for Robin Hood, interestingly, for Kevin Costner's Prince of Thieves, Assassins, 1995, Three Musketeers, 1993. He wrote All for Love, that's quite cool. Last Action Hero, he did some work there. Lethal Weapon. And I was wondering if he had anything to do. Oh, License to Kill, cool. Anyway, here we are. Now, if I'm honest... Oh. Oh. Like, you wait there, pretty. Yeah, if I'm honest, some of this stuff I don't like the ha 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 what kept you, and the fact that she sort of now runs off this very wide angle screen because it looks better for it's it's a bit. This is where it becomes a bit too corny for my liking, really. I do appreciate the mirrored effect, the fact that the water's wet and the two fighters are silhouetted against the window, the grimy windows. But all the wide angles, it's not quite as interesting as the initial duel, for example, in the car park. But the build-up of the music does tell you that we're coming to the end. Surely his guts should fall out at this point, shouldn't they? I've always quite liked this though. And the wound first opened by Ramirez is now complete. Look at all that energy as well coming out of him. Just so again, it is staged a little bit like a music video. But this same style is the stuff that I appreciate earlier on in the film as being a little bit like a comic book. It is like a comic book, and at times, I think around about here, it is just about crossing that line of being overly staged. And maybe that's the point. Maybe this is why the director's career confuses me so much, is that actually what's happened is that in this film he's just about managed to hold his instincts in check. He's just about managed to make a film that is quite tightly put together, that is working. And then in other projects, especially for example in Highlander 2, some of that stuff just went out the window. Whoever was controlling him went away, you know. But then again, maybe you disagree. Maybe you think this ending is brilliant and perfect, and I like it. I appreciate it, and I think thematically it works. You get the Kurgan getting his comeuppance. I quite like that shot of his head coming, flopping back on his neck. But
So, this is where it all began.
I don't know. It just doesn't. For me, it's the weakest part of the film. Although I like that though, the little visual cue that now we're in the present. We see an aeroplane and some telephone wires.
Patience, Highlander. You have done well. But it will take time. Your generations being born and dying. You're at one with all living things. Each man's thoughts and dreams are yours to know. You have power beyond imagination. Use it well, my friend. Don't lose your head.
And I gotta say, as a kid, I always thought, I don't know, immortality, that's the prize, surely. And also as well, I suppose the question is, how do you pay off this idea of being connected to everyone, having this knowledge what everyone thinks, and it's shown really in Highlander 2 that they weren't quite sure where to take that idea. Not least because of the planet, Planet Zeist? Ugh. One life, one goal. Yeah. And we end with Queen. Well, guys, hopefully this has been vaguely interesting for you. I mean, I just love watching the film, and every single time I watch it, I get a stronger sense of how much I appreciate, for the most part, the way that this film is put together. I really love, I love the line that they walk. I love the quality of the acting and the fact that it's not the best acting in the world. I love the quality of the camera work and the fact that it's shaky here and there. The special effects are shaky here and there. But as a sum of its parts, this thing elevates, and it's brilliant. But you know, beyond that, beyond its, you know, I'm not trying to make out that it's cinematic perfection, because it's not. But that's precisely why, one of the reasons that I love this as well, is that it is it's fun. It's just a fun film, and this is what I want to watch. This is the sort of thing that I go to the cinema for. And also, actually, yeah, this is the reason why I try to watch it on my birthday every year, is that it just makes me smile. And in that sense, it's such a basic tale, good versus evil, but it's the way that it's pulled apart, examined, and put back together again that I appreciate so much. And also, final fun fact: did you know that apparently, according to an interview, inverted commas, with Lara Croft in the mid-90s, where someone was interviewing a sort of an image of Lara on a TV screen, I seem to recall. I think it came on a DVD with a computer game magazine that I once watched, or on a disc, a computer disc, CD-ROM. This interview, and in that interview, she names Highlander as her favourite film as well. So I'm in good company, apparently. Me and Lara Croft, we have the same taste in music, and movies, and I think we're off to a good start. Now all I need to do is meet her and hopefully, you know, ingratiate myself into the family, hang around Croft Manor a little bit, you know, maybe move in. Speaking of which, actually, I'm also looking forward to the new Tomb Raider movie next year. That should be interesting. But anyway, guys, that's everything. Thank you so much for sticking it out with me if you are here at this point, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know if you want to hear commentary on any other movies. I'll be happy to maybe give it a go. But in particular, I've always wanted to just talk about this film. So there we have it. Thank you, as ever, for watching, for listening, I guess. And until next time, as ever, do take care. Bye-bye.